In his 50s, American electrician Walter Fielding began an extraordinary adventure in a remote Laotian village. Drawn to the village women, including a pair of twin sisters, he built a new life there, determined to fix the village's electrical problems while becoming the father of many children. Walter Fielding was an electrician from a small Ohio town, plain-looking and not especially articulate, but known for being grounded and hard-working. Since training in his 20s, he had worked conscientiously and always aimed for perfection. Yet, Walter's life had not been smooth. Marriage seemed out of reach in his early 30s, and he focused solely on work, ignoring personal matters. Through his late 30s and early 40s, he pushed to earn more money for retirement, working overtime and side jobs. By the time he'd built up some savings, his peers were already settled with families, and he realized he had missed that window. In his 50s, his friends' children were already grown, in college or working, and though he sometimes felt lonely at gatherings, he also enjoyed the freedom of being single and had accepted that marriage was unlikely at this point in life. Then one day, he got a call from Michael Stevens, an old college friend with whom he'd occasionally stayed in touch. Michael, now working with a Christian aid group overseas, asked him to volunteer. "Walter, how have you been?" "I'm going to Laos next month for some charity work. They desperately need electricians. Would you consider coming?" Laos, Walter Fielding had only ever seen the Southeast Asian country in textbooks or on TV. He'd long dreamed of seeing the world, though. He felt apprehensive because going abroad was completely foreign to him. But Michael convinced him, saying he could offer a small stipend and that it was a rare chance. Walter, though hesitant at first, knew his mood had been low recently and a change of scenery sounded refreshing. Plus, he couldn't refuse a friend. He took leave from work and started preparing, excited yet nervous, a middle-aged bachelor going overseas to volunteer. "What am I doing?" He laughed at himself, but deep down he was thrilled like a kid. The excitement of the unknown, combined with a sense of purpose, filled his heart with anticipation. As Walter boarded the flight to Laos, he looked down at the endless sea of clouds, a rush of excitement surging through him. It was the first time he'd flown in his 50 years, and he sat stiffly in his seat, heart pounding. Hours later, he landed at Vientiane Airport. As he stepped outside, a wave of heat hit him. This must be that tropical monsoon climate, he thought. After collecting his bags, Michael greeted him warmly. "Walter, you made it! Big change from Ohio, huh? Watch out for the heat." The culture shock was immediate. Bumpy roads, crowded shops, endless motorcycles and tuk-tuks. Michael hired a tuk-tuk to take them to the mission site, but the rough ride left Walter jostled and exhausted. Still, he couldn't take his eyes off the scenery outside. They arrived at Bandar Mai, a small village near Vang Vang. Michael's organization was housed in what was practically a shed, with barely functioning utilities. Across from the mission was a modest school where children played, and a tiny market. Nearby, locals watched Walter with curiosity, unaccustomed to foreigners. By the time he reached his assigned hut behind the mission, worn out by the heat and the bumpy ride, he was thoroughly drained. The room had only a fan and water-stained walls, but he told himself, "I can handle this." The very next morning he got to work inspecting the mission's wiring and the surrounding village's systems. Michael, familiar with the area, acted as his guide and translator. Walter was shocked by what he found. The aging wiring was dangerously worn, with serious short-circuit risks and no proper grounding, posing severe safety hazards. Repairing the wires, this is simply a disaster, Walter thought. With his years of experience, he quickly found the problem he climbed onto. Thereof of the mission building, braving Fahey to repair the wires, drill holes in walls, and connect new wires and switches. He didn't have many materials, so he could only do his best using the tools he brought from the States and the materials he could find locally to strengthen the safety measures as much as possible. The high temperature and humidity of over 95°F made him easily tired, but the villagers gathered touch. Walter repaired the wires. Everyone had a smile on their face and kept saying, Kopchai, thank you, vloggers, thank you." Although they couldn't understand each other's language, he could feel the sincerity in their eyes and gestures, especially the children who ran after him helped him carry things, brought him water, or handed him a local drink similar to coffee. This is the meaning of being a volunteer. Walter Thornton immediately felt full of strength over compared with the state's backward living environment here. Still gave him a great shock. The lack of a perfect drainage system caused the village to be frequently flooded during the rainy season. Many houses had no electricity, and even families with electricity often had power outages. In the absence of clean water sources, the villagers mainly relied on untreated groundwater or rainwater, which exposed them to various diseases. Despite this, most of the villagers maintained an optimistic attitude. Although they were poor, they helped each other and lived in harmony. Walter gradually integrated into this warm atmosphere. Day after spending a few days repairing the lines around the mission base, Walter noticed that two young girls often brought him water. They looked very young, innocent, and lively, like they were just coming of age. At first he thought they were mission staff, but soon learned that they were twin sisters. They looked very similar with dark skin and black hair. At first glance it was difficult to tell them apart, but on closer inspection they could still be distinguished by their voices or subtle expression. She brought Walter water and occasionally some small snacks. He smiled and said, "Thank you," to express his gratitude, but he always felt that they seemed to want to say something to him and kept wandering around him. One day he stopped what he was doing and walked up to them. "Is there anything you want to say to me? You've been following me? Do you need my help?" One of the twins plucked up her courage and said cautiously. Her English wasn't very good, so she could only use some simple words to explain that the electricity in their house often had problems and that the lines looked unsafe. Other sister added that their father's legs and feet were inconvenient and he couldn't work, so they couldn't repair the house either. Walter sighed and thought, there's still a lot to do at the mission base. Where do I have time to go to other people's houses? However, his serious and responsible nature took over. What's more, couldn't refuse the twin sister sincere request. "Okay, after I'm done at the mission I'll go to your house and take a look." Hearing this, the sisters smiled brightly and thanked him repeatedly. A few days later, the mission base's lines were basically repaired, and Walter went to the twin sisters' house. Their house was located on the edge of the village, which required a long walk, and the road was rugged and dusty. The sun was still scorching and the humid air was suffocating. And he arrived at his destination. He found that the sisters' house was simply a dilapidated shack. The roof was covered with rusty tin and the walls were pieced together with bamboo and wood. What surprised him most was the condition of wires. The wires were exposed, tangled together like spider webs. If he wasn't careful, it could cause a fire. Moreover, this area was prone to floods and rainstorms during the rainy season. The high temperature and humidity caused the wires to age seriously, and the risk of electric shock was very high. This is simply too dangerous. Walter wiped his sweat and exclaimed. He immediately began to look around for the materials he needed and began to repair them. The sisters introduced Walter to their father. He was sitting on a small wooden stool with a limp in one leg. He was in a car accident a few years ago. His leg was injured and he can't do heavy work. Walter saw apology and gratitude in the eyes of the sisters' father. This couldn't be solved in a day or two. He needed to replace all the old wires, ground them properly, and repair the lines, trying to avoid the safety hazards caused by humidity. Walter knew how bad the electricity situation in this village was, so he decided not to delay. From that day on, he spent a few hours every day helping the sisters repair their house. As time went by, the sisters became more and more considerate to Walter. They would make some vegetables grown in their own garden or buy some fish and meat from the nearby market and make delicious meals for him while introducing Walter to local Lao dishes. They would explain one by one, "This is fried pork skin, this is grilled fish." Taste of these dishes was completely different from what he was used to back home, but it was surprisingly to Walter's liking. The fresh herbs and spices stimulated his taste buds and made him have a big appetite. Walter was always moved by the sincerity of the sister scan. An old bachelor gets such treatment. At first he was a little overwhelmed, but sister's warm eyes and careful care gradually touched his heart. Of course, they were much younger than him and had different cultures and languages, but he began to think even if he returned to the States, what better future could he have? Maybe he could do something more meaningful here. After a while, when the line renovation project In the sisters' house was nearing completion, the sisters' father quietly called Walter aside. He took Walter's hand and used broken English and gestures to express his intention. To entrust his two daughters to him, Walter felt that his mind was blank. This seemed to be more than just letting him marry two daughters. Of course, this situation was unimaginable in traditional American culture. Moreover, what would it mean to live with the twin sisters and take care of them? He needed to think carefully. The sister's father mentioned some local customs that shocked Walter in this area. Due to economic poverty or fewer men, it was not uncommon for a man to form a family with several women. In particular, it is said that in some poor families, in order to survive better or to prepare for the children's afterlife, they would accept foreigners as spouses. Orcahabitancy sounded like a fantasy, and Walter was surprised to immediately confess the matter to Michael. Entrust his two daughters to me. This is the confession too absurd, right? I'm already in my 50s and they're only in their early 20s, and there are two of them. How is that possible? Mitchell said unexpectedly. Calmly, have heard of similar things here. The customs here are different from those in States. Moreover, I really appreciate your contribution to the village, and our mission is so much better because of you. To be honest, the organization's efforts here are short-staffed and needs someone new who understands electricity technology to support us. If you are willing to stay, we can give you some subsidies. Walter listened with his eyes wide open. Was he really going to live in Laos? Back in the States, his former job as an electrician didn't offer much room for advancement. Moreover, he knew clearly that his savings were simply not enough for retirement. Most importantly, the life in Laos during this period made him feel unprecedented. Apis. The villagers' grateful sense of accomplishment in improving the poor environment and the warmth between people. Finally, after careful consideration, Walter decided to talk to the twin sisters in person. That night they had a serious conversation with the sisters over dinner at a small restaurant on the edge of the village. He expressed his feelings in simple English and translation software. Our father wants me to live with you. Living like a family makes me feel very embarrassed, to be honest. I'm just an ordinary guy from the States and I'm very old. I'm not sure if it's appropriate for the three of us to live together. Is this just a sense of responsibility? Sisters looked at each other and listened quietly to Walter. After a while, the older sister said cautiously, "We respect you very much. You helped our father and also helped our village. You a good person. Our family is very poor and there are not many job opportunities in Laos. If you are willing to be with us, we will try our best to take care of you," the younger sister added. "We think you are very sincere. We hope to help each other and respect each other in the days to come. We saw you repairing the wires and helping the villagers, and we also want to help you." As the conversation deepened, the atmosphere gradually became relaxed. The older sister asked, curiously, "Do people in the States drink like this too?" Walter told them about drinking traditions back home, and everyone allowed that night. Dinner and conversation lasted so long that the sisters invited Walter to rest at their house. It was too late to go back to the mission base, and he had had a few drinks, so he decided to stay away. "Have a spare room in our house where Ao can sleep," the younger sister said. However, something unexpected happened. These three people came from different countries and cultures. The friendship and trust that had been built up in a short period of time and a kind of inexplicable emotion brought each other's hearts closer. Walter was very confused. He didn't know if all this will really happen to him. Of course, that specific process cannot be described in detail, but the warmth of that night was something he had never experienced in his 50 years. Next morning, Walter looked at the twin sisters sleeping beside him, and his heart was filled with mixed feelings. Was this really the right thing to do? But wasn't it too late now? On the other hand, a strange sense of peace and comfort arose spontaneously. Sisters looked at each other, smiled shyly, and greeted him in Lao, "Good morning." At that moment, Walter made a decision. Well, there's no future in going back to the States, so I might as well stay here and do what I can, live a good life with these two kind girls. In the following week, Walter met again with Michael and the person in charge of mission. They agreed to give him some subsidies from the organization every month on the condition that he stayed in the village and was responsible for maintaining the electrical facilities and carrying out some construction work. Of course, this money was much less than what he earned in the States. But considering the prices in Laos, it wasn't to make a living. Michael said, I don't know if you can stay here for a long time. However, for our mission for this village, you are a valuable talent. Get along well with the sisters, and if you can strive to live a happy life. So Walter began to go through the procedures for long-term residence in Laos. The process of converting a tourist visa to a long-term visa was relatively simple. Laos has a relatively lenient policy on foreigners' residence, and with help of Michael and the mission, the procedures were completed quickly. A month later, 10 women in the village, including the twin sisters, found Walter and said cautiously seemed to be pregnant. Walter was stunned on the spot. What after Furialith women looked at each other and nodded with a smile. His mind was blank, but after fear there was more of a sense of responsibility. In his 50s, he was actually going to be father of 10 children. At that moment, Walter felt an unprecedented sense of responsibility and joy surge into his heart. In order to take care of his pregnant wives, he needed a more stable living environment. Walter first tried his best to repair their houses, ensuring safe access to electricity and water. With the funding from the mission, he replaced the walls with stronger bricks and tiles and repaired the roof. Although it was difficult to carry out large-scale construction, he hoped to make the house withstand the floods and typhoons of the rainy season. At the same time, when there were electrical problems elsewhere in the village, Walter would pick up his toolbox and set off in a tuk-tuk. There were countless places that needed his help, including houses, small shop, schools. He was happy every day that the skills he learned in the States could be put to use, especially when the rainy season started. The village's power was often interrupted. Walter installed a temporary generator to prepare for emergencies and replan the lines. The villagers expressed their gratitude to him every time, and he gradually became a famous electrical expert in the village. Of course, Walter's own strength was limited, so he recruited some young people from the village and taught them simple circuit principles and safety knowledge, the importance of grounding, role of safety devices, how to use insulating tape, basic line connections. At first, it was difficult for the young people to understand his words, but with help of Michael and local translators, they studied hard. Although Walter felt tired, he felt that even if left this village one day, if they could use the knowledge they learned to help each other, that would be enough. The villagers also cooperated, actively sending Walter food or helping to find building materials. You are so good, Tos, we can't stand by and watch. They say the entire village gradually turned into a small construction site as the beliefs of the 10 wives grew day by day. Walter also felt a greater responsibility. The mission also funded some prenatal checkup costs. Nevertheless, the medical conditions in Laos were still not as good as they were back in the States. In order for the children to be born safely, he had to be more careful. Old people in the village taught the wives some traditional prenatal and postpartum care knowledge. Walter also tried his best to find nutritious food to make soup for his wives to nourish their bodies. The villagers also sent meat, vegetables, rice, etc. to help the pregnant women supplement their nutrition. The wives looked at Walter gratefully, and he once again made up his mind that he must ensure that they gave birth safely. Finally, around the due date, the wives began to feel labor pains one after another. The problem was that they were almost pregnant at the same time, so the time of delivery was also very concentrated. Local hospital had limited conditions, and it was difficult to take care of so many people at the same time, and the medical staff was also severely short. Nevertheless, the mission and the villagers worked together to prepare for childbirth in the hospital and in temporary delivery rooms built at the mission. Walter felt that his heart was about to break. He couldn't ignore any party. He ran back and forth to check the situation, sweating profusely. The first wife successfully gave birth to a boy in the local hospital. When the child cried for the first time, Walter also shed tears of excitement. I'm really a father of 10 children. Other wives also gave birth to their children in the hospital or in the delivery room. Although there were some thrilling moments, fortunately everyone was safe and sound. The villagers gathered at the mission to pray and celebrate the arrival of new life. In a short period of time, Walter became the father of 10 children. He was overjoyed and seemed to have shed all the tears he could see in his life after the children were born. The life of Walter and his 10 wives entered another stage. Raising Werbs was much more difficult than he imagined. He fed them milk, changed diapers, and had to endure the pain of sleep deprivation at night, coaxing thick-reeing children. Fortunately, the wives helped each other and shared the responsibility of taking care of the children. Walter was busy with various things in the village during the day and came back at night to take care of the children with his wives. Of people in the village now call him not just Walter Fielding. Some call him Mr. Walter, some call him Master Walter, and some call him Papa Walter. Master Walter is because he teaches electrical engineer technology, and Papa Walter is because he is the father of 10 children. As time went by, the children grew up day by day, and Walter wanted to create a better educational environment for them. He improved the electrical facilities in the village primary school, installed a small solar panel, and provided lighting and fans for their classroom. In the cool classroom, the children could study in peace. His relationship with the mission became closer. Walter began to expand his service scope to other nearby villages. The means of transportation was still a tuk-tuk, but he would try his best to meet everyone who needed help. One village was almost half submerged during floods. Walter and the local young people raised the position of the distribution box and built flood control dikes to avoid the submergence of electrical facilities. As a result, the village no longer had frequent power outages even during rainy season, which brought great convenience to the villagers' production and life. In another village, people had always wanted to use electric water pumps to extract groundwater, but they couldn't do it due to lack of electricity. Walter and the mission cooperated to install a small solar power generation system, solving the villagers' problems. As a result, the villagers could conveniently irrigate their farmland, and their lives gradually improved. Of course not everything went smoothly. Living with 10 wives is also complex and unusual in Laos, even if practiced in some areas due to circumstances, and there were sometimes misunderstandings and conflicts in the village. However, Walter's sincere dedication to the village and the mutual help among the wives gradually opened people's hearts. By building a larger house for his 10 wives and children, and by helping the village build a stable power grid, he gradually became the center of the community. As time passed, Bandon May village had become a brightly lit place. Walter looked at the children running around and playing carefree, and a happy smile appeared on his face. His lone life back in the States had become a distant memory. Here he found new meaning. His story proves that love and responsibility can transcend culture and border. Thank you for watching. I hope this story will inspire you to pay attention to social issues. If you are touched, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to my channel. Let us spread positive energy together and protect the light. Thank you.